Johnny Carson's long-hidden dark secret and unseen footage of him. The Tonight Show aired on U.S. television for over 30 years, imprinting itself in the memory of numerous generations. Johnny Carson, the show's host, was noted for his captivating on-screen manner and ability to crack one-liners. Can you determine who it is, from his issues to the one visitor he genuinely despised after having them on the show? Discover some of his life's mysteries, including the truth about his masculinity. Texas. Johnny Carson enjoyed visiting Texas. He was virtually looking for excuses to be there. We now know why. According to Carson's legal advisor, Henry Bushkin's recent book, he had an affair with a woman known as Miss Texas by Bushkin. Carson was a philanderer himself. Despite his desire to gather proof of his wife, Bushkin said the romance lasted 8 or 9 years. Lady Blondes. Many Tonight Show viewers would recall a dizzy blonde figure known as the matinee lady, Carol Wayne, a model and actress, played her to a T, developing the stupid blonde image to a T, even making guest appearances on The Red Skelton Show. The Tonight Show's customary 90-minute run was cut to 60 minutes in 1980. Carson argued that it would be beneficial for the program, making it seem faster-paced, but it meant that several sketches, like Matinee Lady, would have to be eliminated. Carol's misfortune. While the show went on as usual, Carol found herself without a regular income and battled to make ends meet. To deal with her stress, the actress resorted to alcohol and drugs, and she went on to make poor love judgments. Edward Durston, a car salesperson, was one of the guys who transported her to Mexico in 1985. Carol died unexpectedly over the Christmas season. The Tonight Show paid respect to her by suspending the matinee lady role for a year, after which she was played by actress Teresa Genzel. Many people, however, said that no one could portray Carol quite like Carol. Her unknown death. Carol and Ed reportedly had a nasty quarrel on their Mexican holiday, which left the actress in anguish. A group of local fishermen discovered her dead, floating in the ocean 3 days later. The woman's cause of death was never determined. She didn't have any drugs or alcohol in her blood, and the water was too shallow for her to drown unless she was high. Ed's actions after her death were unusual. He had already left the country when Carol's death was found, purportedly leaving the actress's baggage at the airport. In the end, it was a hotel employee who had to identify the corpse. Though there was never any definite proof, many people assume this guy had a role in the actress's tragedy. Carol wasn't the only one. One reason the rumors about Durston persisted was because he had previously been tied to another death. In 1969, he was there when Diane Linkletter, the daughter of television icon Art Linkletter, fell from a skyscraper. At the time of her death, Art suspected his daughter was experiencing LSD flashbacks. Following her death, he became an outspoken anti-drug advocate, even foregoing his career to do so. Art had been opposed to his daughter's drug usage even before her death. He released an anti-drug CD, to which Diane responded. Her CD was even nominated for a Grammy. Diane's drug history was well known, and she had complained of bad trips in the past, leading many to suspect she committed suicide due to her mental condition. Ed Durston was connected to her death since he was the last person to see her alive, and he even claimed to have attempted to stop her from falling from the balcony. He was interrogated about her death but never prosecuted. Jack of all trades. Older viewers may recall that Johnny Carson was not the Tonight Show's initial host. Jack Paar played the role from 1957 until 1962. Although Carson was sometimes in hot water, Paar was much more contentious as a presenter. Among his controversies were an interview with Cuban leader Fidel Castro and forcing Mickey Rooney off the program amid the broadcast because his guest was inebriated. But his most famous issue was on a joke that never aired. Paar delivered the relatively offensive, at the time, joke as part of a pre-recorded segment. He discovered during the live broadcast that the censors had removed the joke from the segment. Outraged, he stormed off the stage amid the show, declaring, "This is my last night at The Tonight Show. There has to be a better way to make a life than this. Thank you for always being so kind to me." Post-Paar period. Parr's abrupt departure wreaked havoc on the program, but he was eventually persuaded to return after a month. When he returned, he pretended nothing had occurred and continued to host the program for another 2 years. However, it was clear that the episode had a significant impact on him. He stated he departed permanently because he couldn't keep up with the task of putting on a daily 105-minute program. Some speculate that he left the late-night program because he couldn't get rid of the memories of his previous walkout. Parr went on to host additional programs, including many primetime appearances, but with a less busy schedule. Whatever the reality was, his departure freed up a space for Johnny Carson, who would go on to leave a long history with the program. Bert's support. Despite his disagreements with many other television stars, Carson was openly supportive of others, like Bert Parks. Parks was a television announcer and vocalist, best known for presenting the Miss America Beauty contest in the 1960s and 1970s. His 20-year run as the singer of There She Is, Miss America, came to an abrupt end in 1979. The show's producers thought he had outgrown the job and that he should be replaced with a younger presenter. They had no idea that their choice would spark a public uproar. Johnny Carson joined in, launching his on-air campaign to get Parks restored. Bert tragically never returned, much to the disappointment of his followers. A scandal in the Oval Office. Carson was not just involved in his controversies, he was sometimes successful in causing problems for others. Gary Hart, who ran for president against Michael Dukakis in the late 1980s, was embroiled in one such high-note dispute. He was forced to withdraw from the race when it was found that he was having an affair. The New York Post released a photograph of Hart on a boat with a lady called Donna Rice. Not only was his public humiliation caused by the picture, but also by the fact that his affair was utilized as jokes by several late-night comedians, including Johnny Carson. Many feel his campaign was doomed by his relentless barbs. The laughter continues. Who could blame these comedians? After all, it's their profession to make jokes about current events, and there are instances when the content is just too fantastic to pass up. The boat in which the two were cited was dubbed Monkey Business. Talk about irony. Isn't it reassuring to know that the identity of the next president of the United States could be decided in large part by Johnny Carson's joke writers, said television reviewer Greg Dawson at the time. Is this a fantastic democracy or what? Of course, jokes about the lifestyles and actions of renowned politicians were nothing new at the time, and they would continue to be a major source of material for late-night comedians. However, their punches no longer have the same negative impact. After all, Trump was elected despite all the public and private ridicule heaped on him for his gaffes. Mood. Although The Tonight Show included a lot of comedic performances and skits, it also had musical guests. Morrissey, the singer-songwriter, performed on the program during his ascent to popularity in the 1990s. He was a tremendous success with the younger crowd, but not with Carson and the other guests. Why? Because these other stars received no attention that night. It seems that youthful audiences interested in dark rock music were less engaged in the comedic portion of the program. Despite being one of the more popular segments, Johnny's introductory speech went down like a lead balloon. Bill Cosby, the evening's comedic guest, failed to garner a chuckle, even after changing his routine to appeal to the youthful crowd. Allegations. You may believe you've heard all of Carson's controversies, but there's more to come. Throughout his lengthy career, there were several rumors about his conduct toward women and whether it constituted sexual harassment. They remain rumors since no lawsuits were ever filed. However, this might simply be because Carson was known to have a large number of skilled attorneys at his disposal. Some women have begun to come out and publicize his conduct, openly sharing their unfavorable interactions with the late-night celebrity. Unfortunately, no justice can be served for these ladies since Carson died in 2005. However, victims often do not feel comfortable discussing their experiences while the person is still alive. Adventure. Sally Field, an actress, was briefly associated with Carson and subsequently revealed the strange nature of their connection. Field, in an interview with Andy Cohen on Watch What Happens Live, likened her and Johnny to the octopus and the reluctant little guppy. Cohen interpreted Johnny's remark to suggest that he had been all hands with the young actress. She went on to say that when they dated, it was only because she didn't know how to say no to his advances, and that she had never been interested in him. Excuse. Saying no was supposedly a regular challenge for Field at the time, so much so that she invented her bizarre reasons to get out of awkward situations. During the same Watch What Happens Live interview, she said, "I would tell people I had lost my mind," a method she attempted with Carson. "I told him I was being sent away to an institution because I was having a breakdown," Sally said. "I didn't know how else to explain that I wasn't interested in him in that manner. So I simply told him, 'I'm sorry, I have to go. They're bringing me to a nursing home.'" Second option. Carson is so closely associated with The Tonight Show that it's difficult to believe he wasn't the first pick to host the famous show. When the time came to replace the former presenter, Jack Parr, producers approached Bob Crane, who was already well known on television and radio. Crane made the correct option, and he went on to play his now famous role in Hogan's Heroes. Crane's success, however, didn't run forever, and his life and career were tragically cut short in 1978. He was discovered stabbed to death in a hotel room, but neither the murder weapon nor the killer were ever located. Crane's son thought for years that the perpetrator was a former friend of his father's, but a DNA test in 2016 proved him incorrect. The unwanted encounter. Johnny Carson, the legendary host of The Tonight Show, was well known for his humor, charisma, and ability to engage a diverse spectrum of guests. Robin Hilton, on the other hand, made a lasting impact for all the wrong reasons. Her presence on the program is widely regarded as one of the most unwelcome in its history. Hilton's participation in the program was plagued by discomfort and a mediocre relationship with Carson, despite her early prominence as a model and actress. Their lack of chemistry became the buzz of the town, making her the most unwelcome visitor in the show's history. This event served as a reminder that not every visitor can shine under the bright lights of Johnny Carson's stage, even in the glittering world of Hollywood. Return to the Future. If you've watched the movie Back to the Future, you're probably acquainted with the DeLorean. The car was named after its inventor, engineer, and auto executive John DeLorean, whose idea wowed Johnny Carson. Johnny was so amazed that when DeLorean launched his firm, he instantly invested. Though DeLorean was a competent engineer, he had significant flaws, one of which was his relationship with narcotics. He was arrested for cocaine trafficking worth $24 million just a few years after his company launched. Surprisingly, he was acquitted of all charges, claiming police entrapment. Despite escaping incarceration, his reputation was ruined, and his firm, along with Carson's money, went bankrupt. Keeping a safe distance. Carson's duty as host included interviewing his guests every night, but it seemed to be the end of his connection with them. He avoided small talk with his guests, unlike other hosts of the period such as Dick Cavett, Mick Douglas, and Merv Griffin, and kept his distance both before and after the program. There was one exception to this antisocial practice throughout his many years as a host. To the amazement of his team, when Orson Welles was scheduled as a guest on The Tonight Show, Johnny addressed him right before the program, but for the rest of the visitors, he remained aloof, even rudely so. To be courteous, he refused to laugh, and he often cut interviews off mid-sentence if he was not interested in what his guest was saying. A touch of mystery. Karnak, who was brought to The Tonight Show roster in 1964, was one of the show's famous characters throughout the years. His shtick was to conjure solutions to perplexing inquiries as only a mystic from the East could. This intriguing presence was complemented by an appropriately strange wardrobe. Karnak would appear from behind a curtain wearing a cloak and an elaborate turban to Indian music. Meanwhile, broadcaster Ed McMahon would begin the performance by saying, "Nobody knows what these envelopes contain except you in your mystical and borderline divine way. You're the only one who can answer these questions without having to listen to them." The network's king. Johnny's tenure as the host of The Tonight Show was the most successful in the show's history. In fact, throughout the 1970s, he was the most successful show on television, raking in between $50 and $60 million each year for network NBC. In today's dollars, it translates to about $180 to $220 million. With the program bringing in so much money, network officials needed to keep its presenter pleased. so Johnny had almost full control over how things were run. When he felt he needed more time off, he reduced the show's duration from 90 minutes to 60 minutes. When he didn't get his way, he threatened to switch networks, and his requests were satisfied. Carson's hidden truth. The tape, which had been concealed for decades, portrays a side of Carson that stands in stark contrast to his affable on-screen character. Carson can be seen dealing with personal issues in this astonishing footage, revealing a weakness that he had managed to disguise from his adoring audience for so long. The revelation of this tape has spurred heated debates regarding Carson's character's complexities, causing fans to re-evaluate the guy behind the famed late-night desk. This additional insight into Carson's private troubles serves as a reminder of the complexities of even the most famous public personalities, leaving an enduring effect on how we see his legacy. SNL started by accident. After Carson's request for shortened working hours was approved, producers were faced with finding something to replace the 30 minutes that were lost. They came up with the concept of a live variety show, beginning with Saturday Night Live. What began as a need became an immediate hit, not to mention a victory for comedy fans, and the program is still running decades later. Carson argued that switching to a shorter format was not just for the sake of his working hours, but also for the sake of the show. They said that with fewer guests, they'd be of better level, and the 1-hour format would seem more fast-paced and interesting. Sex tape scandal. Some of the controversies involving the iconic talk show host surfaced only after his death. An old sex tape depicting Carson and one of his wives was uncovered in 2014, 9 years after his death. Johnny's black hair was still visible on the cassette, which was supposed to have been recorded in the 1970s. The tape's owners attempted to extort money from Carson's estate in exchange for its return, but they refused, instead threatening to sue if it was leaked. They were able to avoid legal action by selling it to a private collector. This collector then went on to distribute stills from the cassette rather than the video footage over the internet. It's probably a good thing Carson was already deceased at the time, since the stress of the controversy would have been too much for him. Missing pilot. You'd think that some of the landmark episodes would have been kept for posterity, but not even the very first show was given particular consideration. That's right, you can't see the pilot episode from October 1st, 1962. The most you can hope for is an audio recording of Groucho Marx introducing the host, as well as the introductory monologue. There's also a picture of them shaking hands. If you wish to see any of the early episodes, the first one is from November 1962, when it was still shot in black and white. The first color film is dated April 1964, when Jake Ehrlich Sr. was a guest on the program. McMahon's money woes. McMahon's lengthy years of hard labor didn't shield him from financial difficulties later in life. In 2008, it was believed that he owed $644,000 on a $4.8 million mortgage on a Beverly Hills home, putting him in foreclosure. Citibank also filed a claim against him for an additional $180,000 at the time. McMahon and his wife both appeared on Larry King Live to address their financial difficulties. They sought to dispel certain myths regarding their condition. They were said to have access to millions of money, which wasn't true. It was also believed that the couple had spent $275,000 on a divorce lawyer when it was someone to assist their daughter in a matrimonial matter. Confession time. Carson sought to keep his troubles out of the public eye, even though his drinking was well known among his friends, family, and others in the profession. He was aware that any journalist would ask him probing questions, therefore he avoided conducting interviews. However, Johnny's drinking started to affect the way he performed, and he realized he had a major issue. Carson's drinking issue became apparent when he consented to an in-depth interview with 60 Minutes. During the program, he revealed that he does not manage alcohol well, adding, "I don't handle alcohol well at all, no." He also blamed his drinking on TV announcer Ed McMahon, saying, "Oh, Ed and I have had some wonderful times in the past." While these evenings may have seemed to be lovely at the time, he made some inappropriate comments while under the influence that were very disrespectful to others and would come back to haunt him. family problems. Because there aren't many secrets in show business, it was well known that Carson had a drinking problem. Unfortunately for those around him, he was not a happy drunk. Instead, his bad conduct worsened. This was especially visible one October night in 1987. The program was celebrating its 25th anniversary, and NBC hosted a luxurious celebration themed around the Queen Mary. Carson's son Rick had been invited to the celebration, and he, like his father, was an alcoholic. Rick became quite intoxicated during the celebration, as one could imagine, which upset his renowned father. Carson became enraged and started yelling at his kid in front of relatives, friends, TV executives, and celebrities. Carson had to be pulled from him before he could physically assault him.